Hi, welcome to another episode of Speak Greasy. My guest today really needs no introduction, but I think it's fair to say he's the torchbearer of the Indian cafe culture. He started out with 10 lakhs, a little over 20 years ago, and has now built a company worth over 1,000 crores. So I think we have a lot to learn from all his mistakes over the years. Welcome to the show, Riyaaz.
Thank you.
Huge congratulations. 10 years of social. I feel like it just opened. So in fact, when they told me it's 10 years of social, I was like, already?
Yeah, even I was shocked.
Yeah.
I'm like, 10 years? What? No.
Yeah. Let's talk about this empire that you've built and, of course, this incredible brand, Social. How did it come up?
Thank you, Gauri, for having me here. You're doing some amazing things in this Mac Street kitchen. I know that there have been so many incredibly talented chefs that have walked through this, and this was a very pioneering effort. So,
thank you.
Cheers for this one.
Cheers.
Glad to be here. Oh. What brought about Social? We used to have a brand called Mocha, which we started off in 2001, and it was a cafe aimed at the Gen Xers, people who are slightly older than me. Yeah. And we realized that people wanted to hang out. I think that was a big niche in the market, and I think that cafes are inherently very different from restaurants.
Yeah.
Right. Cafes, you go willy-nilly. You go for comfort. You go for community convenience. But restaurants are different. Restaurants is more about food and elevation and excitement and experience. And so they're very different things there. I think that cafes, people really just go. F&B is almost incidental. Right? People go to hang out. Right? And for the longest time, we had a little bit of a Western overhang where we thought that a cafe has to be some place where you get cappuccinos and croissants. And did I spell croissant?
Croissant.
No, croissant. Okay. Where you get like sandwiches and biscottis, and that was the paradigm. We went into the roots of the coffee house, and the first known coffee houses were in the Middle East and North Africa, where the first kiva khans, as they were called, or coffee house, literally, which was literally your home thrown open to travelers and people, and where you used to get a kava and a shisha, which was again a very...
I remember the really low seating and hanging out, and you kind of became really comfortable and you didn't want to move for hours, so that worked for sure.
Yeah, and we realized that people wanted to hang out. They wanted places where they could hang out for at least a couple of hours, because that's the time that people want to hang out. And I always find that when you ask somebody, have breakfast with me, that's a 45-minute time limit, right? If you say lunch, it's a 1.5 hour time limit. Coffee is minimum 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right? Drinks is, of course, much longer. So there was definitely a need, which we saw. But with coffee, what used to happen is you can only have 1 cup of coffee. Unless you're a complete maniac, you won't have 2 cups of coffee. And you can have a muffin or a sandwich, but it doesn't really hit the Indian spot. So we kind of were trying to figure out what is the social space for India and what should that look like. Can we do something without a paradigm? So we wanted to kind of create a space which was a coffee shop built for kind of an emerging India, but also has 1 foot in the future and has 1 foot deeply rooted in the past. And we were very, very clear that we wanted a space that could be relevant in a Kolaba, but could also work in a Kurla. Right? We wanted to straddle this unnamed divide that was kind of...
Oh, the diversity.
The diversity, but there's always, like, once you cross the west side of Bombay is very different. Like, Bombay is not divided north and south. Bombay is divided east and west.
Really?
Yeah, I think so, no? Everybody on the west side of the railway tracks are
the cool people.
Yeah, the cool ones. And
ironically, Baikala was like the wealthiest part of the city at one point.
It was.
Which is very much on the east.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's still one of the prettiest parts of town.
Yeah.
We wanted to create a space which was egalitarian.
But it's funny because you keep mentioning coffee, but I always associate alcohol with social. So
Yeah.
is that something that kind of evolved, or do you feel like they both have a place in the brand?
In my head, a cafe, which is a Western term, is really just another word for a place where people can gather. Uh, whether you sell lassi and parathas
It's
or whether
incidental, yeah.
it's fried fish and toddy, it doesn't matter. It's just places, an egalitarian places where anybody can walk in. Coffee is a mood space in my head. Even when we were doing Mocha, right, only 15% of our sales was actually coffee. So what I realized, people want to hang out, but they just don't only want to restrict themselves to a particular menu. So if you want to have beer and butter chicken, sure. You know, you want Bacardi and biryani, sure.
Social was catering to like Gen Zs and millennials. Is that a fair assumption? Just
Yeah,
in terms
so-
of like how it's done up and the price point.
It was definitely catering to a newer generation. I started off talking about Mocha catering to the Gen Xers. We definitely started seeing a change in consumption and how people were consuming it. People were taking their laptops and sitting in a cafe. So we went into a Salt Water Café or a Prithvi Cafe or a House Deli. And I'm sure you've seen that in
You
some
would
of your
find
cafes.
someone like-
It's
yeah.
always somebody, you know, with laptop open, trying to focus, but every now and then looking up to see whether they need to give up the table or whether they want to go and get a muffin that they don't need, right? So there was definitely this need. And we saw that people were working social. People wanted to feel that they were involved in the urban swirl. I had so many people who had offices on top of the same building that I had a cafe down in, and they used to abandon their really nice offices and come and work on their presentations or have their meetings inside the restaurant, because I feel it kind of it allows you to feel like you're still having a life and you're not just locked away into your ivory tower. So, and there's also some inspiration. You never know who you're going to run into, and you never know, you know, who you're going to interact with. Maybe somebody who has half an idea and you have half an idea, and you kind of collide in a space like this, and something can come out of it. And we've seen that happen. So we try to create a cafe which was also a co-working space. I think 10 years ago, I think we don't know any other space that in the world which had a co-working space and a restaurant together at that point of time. I think co-working spaces were just becoming a thing at that point of time.
Yeah,
but,
I mean...
But we saw it on a daily basis, that people needed spaces where they could just work.
How do you get into the brain of a Gen Z or a millennial, and how are you now today? Sort of no reflection of your age. You're a Gen Z at heart.
Yeah.
But you know, how do you kind of get under the pulse of how they're thinking and what they want? Because you continue to open socials every month, if not more frequently. How many? What's the frequency now?
Yeah, I think it's about 10 a year.
Yeah.
Roughly.
So, you know, how are you now able to kind of get under the skin of that generation and what you're creating?
Well, when I was creating social, I hijacked all of my brother's friends because my brother's 12 years younger than I am. So, and they were speaking a completely different language, you know.
Right,
And,
exactly.
And so we went to this agency called Skarma. It was Akshay Tandon. I don't know, we went to him and said, look, Mocha is suffering from this overhang of hookah. We need to kind of rebrand it, reposition it. Should we do a rebranding exercise or should we do a completely new brand? And they kept using the word social so much in their presentation. I said, screw it, let's just
Is that
call
how the
yeah,
name
that's
came up?
exactly how the name came. Let's just call it social. And then the first one was in Church Street, so we took on the name Church Street Social. And it became a thing. So, yes, it's very important to know your customer. And there's something really pathetic when a 40-year-old is trying to speak a 20-year-old's language. I realize that. My kids are alpha. So, you know, I knew all these new words that I come across like skibidi and sigma. So I'm very well acquainted with the alphas. Gen Zs I'm still trying to struggle with a little bit, yeah.
No, that is, I mean, because even for us, whenever we've thought of a brand or a product, it's been based on a need that we had and, couldn't find maybe. So it's quite interesting that you can kind of think from not just another person's perspective, but another generation.
Well, that's a very interesting point you're making, because the first few restaurants were always
Exactly.
about us and what the kind of places that we would like to go, and it was apply here and supply there kind of thought process. But I guess just looking at people now and looking at a new generation evolving, there are lots of little cues that your customers tell you explicitly or implicitly. And as a restaurateur, there's so many things you got to do, right? You got to keep up with the contemporary culture. You got to go and buy organic vegetables and podcasts and dance with the government. And then this is just one more thing. But I think paying attention to the customer really, after some time, becomes very, very important. And I'm sure now that as you grow your footprint, you will also now start having to pay attention to...
but it's challenging, it's not easy.
Little subtle differences between South Bombay and Bandra, right?
Little bit.
Yeah. And then you go, if the further north you'll go, it'll change a little bit.
We actually, again, this is not because of South Bombay, Bandra, but I think we rebranded for the very reason that you were saying. We rebranded from Mag Street Cafe to Mag Street. For this exact reason that, a cafe does have a different connotation.
Yeah.
And we were sort of food forward in a sense. So, but it's such a challenge to start thinking beyond your realm. And I think that's one of the reasons maybe Misty didn't, our restaurant that we had back in 2018, which we opened with the Woodside Boys. That's one of the reasons I think that was my biggest learning, actually, because we were so sort of caught into what we wanted, which was this, sexy, chic cocktail space, adult space. Didn't want youngsters around, kids around. Sometimes we're in this little bubble, and, you've done an amazing job of I think, coming out of it and, like you said, running with the wolves.
And mistakes are the greatest teacher, isn't it? I think some of our biggest lessons have come from the mistakes that we have made, and also mistakes that our fellow restaurateurs have made. And I think we all are learning from each other in so many different ways.
100%.
We are all seeing, what has worked, what has not worked in that sense. And we are...
The first one's the hardest one to swallow, but then it actually, you survive, and then you realize that life goes on, and actually no one gives a shit as much as you do, and you.
But kudos on that pivot. It was amazing what you've done with that.
It was actually, it wasn't a single pivot. It was two, because we opened another restaurant which survived 10 days, and then COVID happened. And
it's the nature of a beast, right?
Yeah,
you have spent so much money in things that you can't see. The plumbing, the electricity, the kitchen, the licenses. I mean, in a restaurant, a lot of people don't realize, but most of the money goes in the bones. And not so much in the tissue and the skin. Right? So that is secondary. So it does make sense for you to keep
trying.
I think until you find something that works. The first restaurant I started in, Mocha, is now in its fourth avatar. Right? And fair enough. But it definitely is cheaper to flip a restaurant than to start up a whole new restaurant. And I also weirdly think there's not just having a bad idea. Sometimes it could be a good idea, but that location just
timing.
Just that location, even if you were 10 meters down the road or up the road, it would have been a complete...
You think that makes a big difference?
I think so. Yeah, completely. It does make a difference. Like where Carter Road Social is, and where Perch is, right? It's a completely different market. It's just 10 minutes down the road, but it's not even. It's a 3-minute walk. But it's a completely different market, right? There's much more, janta, touristy, people coming from everywhere. And 20 meters up the road is Pali Hill sophistication.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what Bombay is. And it's not just the location. I also feel sometimes timing.
100%.
It's just timing. Right? Sometimes you open up in a swarm of new restaurant openings. Sometimes you... get the timing wrong by a year or two, And either you're way ahead of your curve, or the audience is not ready for you, or whatever. So it's timing also. So no bad ideas, it's just dumb luck actually.
Yeah. A lot of it.
No bad ideas, only good restaurateurs.
Speaking of location, as you're scaling and, obviously your properties are in very prime locations, whether it's malls or the high street. How do you feel when you lose a location to a competitor?
Many things.
No, because, honestly, Riyaaz, this is it doesn't matter. Maybe it gets better. Maybe you grow a thicker skin. But honestly, I've been now, 15 years, right? Competition, it's all great. We all say that, competition makes us stronger and makes our product better, all of that. But nobody is happy when your competition opens next door, at least to start with. Maybe you see the benefit of it in the long term.
Yeah.
But I think initially, whether you lose a location or you lose a team member, or you lose, it still pinches. Is that true? I mean,
it does pinch a lot when you lose a team member that you really cared about, or you've dreamt about a future together with. That hurts a lot more to me than losing a location. Sometimes it's relief, that you've lost this white elephant that was taking away the good work of 5 other restaurants. And sometimes there's a sense of disappointment in yourself that you were not able to crack it, or there's some degree of ego involved. The need to create is something that kind of feeds itself. Everything else has diminishing utility.
This, exact point, I think every time I've been working on a restaurant with Jay, I'm like, this is the last one. I'm done. I'm getting the fuck out of here. This is it. And you're so right, because the minute it opens or it's, it settles down, you're like, okay, you get kujli and you're like, okay, what next? And, I think it's this weird addiction that restaurateurs just can't let go of, it is a bit of an addiction.
I think that is something, it's an itch that needs to be scratched. You say, they ask you, so did you make this from scratch? I said, no, I made this from an itch.
Nice one. You've scaled on a sort of, level that is genuinely enviable, and it's something that it's incredible what you've done in 20 odd years. You said 55 socials now, or coming up on 55. How did your perspective as a restaurateur change when you raised your first round of investment?
Oh, wow. Okay. I think when my father used to tell me till his last few years, "Tu gada hai, tere ko restaurant chalana nahi aata." And what he meant by that was that, you are too dependent on your people, and you should be sitting on the galla yourself, and you should be controlling everything, and everything needs remote management. There are staff kanda kha raha hai, they're eating onions, and you are completely wasting your money on that. I think that it was a mindset, and funding and private equity and all these things became this almost as a sign that you have arrived, and now you're playing with the big boys, and now you're in the big league. But somebody should really tell you about what it really means once you bring private equity on board, and I think there's a whole new show in that.
So AD actually, I remember when he was one of the first to raise.
Yeah.
And he said to me, I've never been more stressed in my life after doing that, because now you're sort of responsible for other people's money, and it's not everything on your own terms. But what was it like for you?
We had a really great investor. Our first investor was just amazing. I wish him on all aspiring entrepreneurs. His name was Deepak Shadatpuri.
Yeah.
And he was just a really great guy. He was a friend, he was a guide, he was a mentor, and he fought along with you, right? Private equity is concerned with doubling their or getting an IRR or internal rate of return. And they are concerned for their slice of their journey. You have to carry the baby a lot longer. So there will always be some degree of divergence in priorities and what you view is good for the business versus what they view is good for, which is best for their returns. And fair enough. But what I did realize that it is not the end, as a lot of people think that, oh, we've raised the money, now we are here. We are now part of the big league. I think that's just the beginning of your story. Because it's literally like you're riding a tiger, and you cannot get off because you will be eaten.
Exactly.
And the only way once you can jump off that tiger is once you paid back everybody and everybody's made a ton of money. And it never happens. It's in perpetuity. Right? I mean,
it's never enough.
You go private equity, you take venture debt, venture capital, private equity, institutional finance, you go public. Yeah. But then once you go public, it's not the end again, because then it's living life quarter se quarter tak, QSQT, as they say. And it just goes on and on and on and on. So you just have to be very, very clear in your head that why are you doing this? Are you doing this because that's what everybody else is doing? I always find that now people are no longer satisfied with having one restaurant the way it used to be earlier. If you don't scale quickly and just scale for the fun of it, you don't feel like you achieved something.
I think there's a lot of peer pressure.
I think it is the environment, and I think it is a child of the media and in the sense of zeitgeist. And like I said, the heroes have changed, from people who used to look up to heavy metal guys and rebels, and now looking up to Mark Zuckerberg, and it's changed, right? People are, the heroes have changed, who you idolize has changed. So, Elon Musk is everybody's poster boy now, not Billy Idol. So, I think that it is, I think the benchmark of success has changed.
But
and then there are YPOs and YEOs and EIEIOs and all of that.
How many of those are you member of?
None.
No, but
they wouldn't have me.
Yeah. But jokes apart, I think it's funny because we are celebrating a big milestone for social, but it almost feels like a year in restaurants is like 10 years of real life.
7 human years.
Yeah, basically. Because there are restaurants around us, like, the ones that haven't scaled and done all of that, which have been around 50, 60 years. How do you kind of reconcile both? I mean, for them, they're going about their thing, they're doing it. Is this a generational thing? Is this what's shifted that's made us become more hungry for?
I wish I knew. Very few restaurants now can boast like 80 did a 24-year-old, 25-year-old party for Olive, and that's a huge milestone. People also don't want to go and consume my father's brand, and my parents' brand. There's a thing. It's a natural aversion. People are going to look for disruption. So it's going to be harder and harder to find those 60 and 70-year-old restaurants.
As you said once, we're in a world of novelty chasers, and that is that's the reality.
Loyalty has given way to novelty. That's the way it is. People, I know my father used to go to 2 restaurants, and he used to go there all the time. And you would now not go back to the same restaurant you went to last month. Yeah. Very, very rare. Because you just have so much variety.
We're not some big tourist hub, right? We're not
definitely
sort
not.
of 365-day tourist destination at all, and you can't depend on that blip that you see in Christmas time. So you really need to be a place where locals come back to you, and I think that's been our biggest challenge and our sort of biggest focus. But what would you advise to someone who wanted to open a restaurant today? Would you advise them to get into the industry in its current climate? From all perspectives, whether it's the bureaucracy, whether it's this idea of new restaurants opening every week, the consumer being a more, distracted, or I wouldn't say distracted, but being a more, a novelty chaser.
Yeah. I definitely cannot tell somebody, don't get into the restaurant business and then go on and open 2 more the next month, right? Because it's, like, and there's so many different ways to, in our business, and the beauty is that there's so many entry points and there's so many manifestations of
What could be?
of what is a restaurant. Like it's cuisine, decor. There's so many different ways, whether it's a QSR, whether it's a cloud kitchen, whether it's a bakery, whether it's casual, it's fine dining, it's a bar, it's a cocktail bar, it's a speakeasy, there's a beer place, there's a sports bar. There's so many different
formats.
right? So it is getting tougher and tougher. It's definitely not a business that one should consider doing on the side, because that's when your shirt gets taken off. If you are ready to give it everything you have and then some, perhaps it can be very rewarding, because the gestation period is not that high in a restaurant. From having this idea in your head to see it come together magically and become a living, breathing thing, and to see people walking in and having a good time, it's very addictive. And while you may not get cash rewards, you do get an unfair amount of publicity. I know a lot of people choose to get into the restaurant business because it becomes a calling card. You know, so-and-so ball bearing company draws a blank expression, but one obscure little restaurant in a bylane somewhere gets you a lot more fame and recognition. But that is not the right reasons to get into the restaurant business. I think it does take a lot out of you, and you have to be prepared to keep giving.
So if you had to tell someone who was, new, doing it for the first time, what is it that you just will never compromise on?
I have compromised on everything possible.
Or what are the essential ingredients of a successful restaurant? I mean, everyone says, location, ambiance, like food and beverage and all. That's obvious. But like if you...
I wish there was just one answer to this. I've seen very mediocre restaurants doing really, really well because they found a great location or they were there at the right place at the right time. And I've seen some fantastic restaurants biting the dust because it was bad timing, or they got something wrong, or it was just a turn of the dice that it's really hard to predict what is going to be a winner and what's not. And it's even harder to predict what will resonate with people and what will not, and when it will resonate and when it will not. And for all our wisdom, it's still a turn of dice, I feel, in some ways.
Well, you make it look a lot easier than you're saying, with the...
I definitely feel that in a space which is a non-restaurant, so I would not think of social as a restaurant. Yeah, I would think of it...
Well, I'm saying restaurant, I'm saying the broad sort of industry. I'm not...
The restaurant thing, okay. Food services industry.
Yeah.
That is the...
the correct lingo.
Low risk, I would say, is a good way of trying to get in a low risk business. I don't mean cloud kitchens. that is guaranteed. That has crushed more dreams of restaurateurs than any other business. But if you can get a restaurant which is already, existing, and it's a flip, and you're just taking on the rentals then it's a low investment. So that's what I mean by a low commitment business. Where you can flip a restaurant, you can change the skin quite easily. It's just some upholstery and some paint on the walls and you're ready to go. I feel that is a lot lower risk than getting into the cloud kitchen business, because the success rates are very, very skewed in favor of a dining out restaurant than just a cloud kitchen, in my opinion.
Interesting. No, I mean, I think that's a new perspective, or it's counterintuitive.
It's counterintuitive, yes.
So what is it that keeps you up at night today? Don't say your kids, but...
it changes from day to day.
I'm sure it's changed in the last 10 years as well,
or
20 years.
It changes every day.
Yeah.
I think we have a new set of priorities every month that we kind of take up, because it's such a business that perfection is so hard to achieve especially when you do it at scale, right? Because it's easier if you are there on the floor with your people. It's easier imbibing your philosophy and your voice. It's just easier. When you have to think of it at scale, and you got to think of things a little bit more differently than you. You have to let go. You have to let go. You have to learn how to trust. You have to learn that everything will be okay. The world will still be spinning if you take a night off. You have to let go for sure. It does happen. But when you take on a new set of priorities every month, you work on that, and then you come back and you revisit some of your old priorities, and you keep doing that. So it changes every month. Really, it's not the same. One month we are worried about controls. The other month we are worried about the brand, and then we are worried about the menu, and then we are worried about the ingredient sourcing, and then HR, and it keeps changing, doesn't it?
Well, it's reassuring to know that you still have these...
First world problems.
Yeah, I guess. But we're in a very similar space where for us to, we think we've created a brand and now you want to scale. I think one of the hardest things that we find is building that next layer of management that really you want people to think like you. Not think like you in the sense of be parrots, but have the same values maybe. What did you look for in people when you were building that next
layer?
Yeah.
Sometimes you feel what is intuitively is not that complicated, and everybody should just know that, right? I mean, come on.
And it's frustrating when they don't.
But it doesn't come that intuitively to some people, and to actually most people. And I've always found that the conscious keeper of the brand is the hardest talent to get. Somebody who understands what the playlist should be, what what the plate should look like, what the fork should look like. Those little things that you get and you understand. Sometimes that does not translate, and you wonder why that is happening. I don't look for magic, everything in one person, I suppose. There are always going to be the right brain and the left brain, and there will be people who will straddle both. If everybody got it, I suppose you wouldn't be special in many ways. I think that just imbibing philosophy, keep talking to people until they get tired of listening. Just keep hammering home the thing, and people will then come and they'll go, and then you have to do it all over again, and it's frustrating. But that's part of it, I guess. That is part of it.
You've got to keep going at it, and you'll find people.
And occasionally you will find somebody who's really, really fantastic.
I'm like fully milking the fact that you're here, and I'm asking you all the questions that I think everyone's wanted to pick your brains for. This is a people's business, right? Like I heard this Starbucks line. They're in the people business selling coffee, not in the coffee business.
Who have people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And because it is about building teams, and one of the hardest things we have to deal with is turnover of team. As you're growing as an organization, like what is it that you do to kind of minimize that? It's inevitable, but what do you do to minimize it?
I think it's a little bit of picking your battles and I find it very interesting. I find that there's always a little bit of a skew between different restaurateurs on where they lay their emphasis. There are certain people who will tell you it's only the food. Rahul has always been a big champion about that, and it's only about the food. And there'll be people who will say, okay, let's do the food, but our greater emphasis is on the service and how our staff makes you feel. And the Bombay canteen guys do that better than most people. I feel like they're really, really fantastic. Then it's just trends and cool and luxury and plush, and somehow all these different restaurants find their balance. They manage to exist. I think that as long as the customer knows what they're going for, and it does what it says on the box, and I think there's room for existence. You can't. I think restaurant perfection is very difficult, where you have everything just grade A.
No, but like when it comes to your team, turnover just something that you accept as part of the business, or are you sort of actively, have you changed things to retain team members so that, you don't have this changing experience, I guess? Yeah, there's attrition, which does affect the experience, whether it's on the food, whether it's how your guests are being managed. And this was a big learning for me, actually, when we did Mystery. People expected us to recreate that experience at the table, especially because it was like round the corner, overnight. And what we had done at the table had taken us 8 years, right? So, but they wanted that same level of familiarity, experience, etc. from the get-go. And that was a huge learning. And we had a whole new team there. So in fact, when we did the next restaurant there, we actually took a bunch of people from the table to there and put them there. And ever since we've sort of opened restaurants after that, it's always been that there's part of that 1/3 is, old team, and then 2/3 is new team, to just have some familiarity and continuity. Because it doesn't matter whether you're food forward or you're, people want that, right? Who doesn't want, like,
to be treated like
exactly like a king, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do as an organization to reduce attrition, basically?
It's a balancing act, honestly, because same store sales growth are hard to come by. It doesn't come naturally because there's a lot of competition that is coming up, and people are looking to try different things. So it is very difficult to retain those numbers, and your expenses are going up. Your sales are flattish, but your expenses are definitely going up. Yeah, and as much as you want to retain your staff, you have to be in a certain number. Your staff cost cannot exceed a certain number, and there you have to make compromises, because you have to be able to maintain your margin, because you've got investors, you've got your analysts, everybody is looking at numbers. So you cannot keep growing along with the people that are growing with you. So there's a certain level of attrition that needs to happen. Your rents are going up every year. Your electricity bill is shooting up. Right? By the way, this Bombay is ridiculous. It's 2x of anywhere else.
I think Bandra is even more ridiculous.
Yeah. It is absurd what they're charging for electricity.
It is.
And they're getting away with it.
Yeah.
Saying that we'll take that up next.
Yes.
What is So these expenses keep going up. So there's a certain amount of attrition which is normal. And especially if you are a celebrated restaurant like yours, people who have that pedigree are even more sought after. But you cannot keep matching the market, right? So at some level you have to be okay with it and
have a backup plan.
It's a constant conversation. Oh, you spend so much time and money training people, but they are going to leave. So why investing in one? And then the corollary is, what happens if you don't train them and they stay? And that is going to become a little worse. So I think it's do this again and repeat, and do this again, and it's a little bit of a treadmill.
What are the next 10 years of social looking like?
Who knows, Gauri? Who knows? I have no idea.
What does the dream look like right now? What does the investor plan look like?
I like to say that making plans more than 6 months in advance is a complete waste in the restaurant business, because anything can change. And but I feel that social has got a lot of legs left in it. We are about the community. There are lots of, and I strongly believe that every community can get a social at some point in time. So for us, we feel there's a lot of juice left in the brand. There are lots of cities. We are only in 10 cities. Even within Bombay, I think we've got 18 or 19 stores. I feel we can easily double the count within Bombay. And that's,
you have 19 in Bombay?
Yeah. 18, I think. 18 in Bombay.
Wow.
Yeah. 10 years ago, when I was drawing up a plan, Bombay was 8 outlets or 9 outlets. But as the communities keep growing and they keep spreading out, these outlets keep opening up. And even now, if you look at our total addressable audience, is not more than 10 million people. and 10 million people.
But that's going to change, right?
Spread out
over the years as sort of that, middle class, that growing middle class. It is going to change. It's going to grow, and you kind of have to keep up with that.
And they will go out more often, and they will spend more, and then will be more restaurants will be competing for that. So it is going to be interesting. But yeah, I feel social has got a lot more scale. So it is all about the community. And there's so many pin codes and neighborhoods that need it needs a neighborhood bar, it needs a neighborhood cafe. And I think we're in a sweet spot. I personally feel that of all the brands that we built, social has the right product market fit for India, because operating in different cities over the years, for the last 22 years, we've taken Mocha to another 18 cities which are non-metros. So we are seeing the consumption pattern change. We are seeing aspirations change. We are seeing attitudes change. How people view going out, and there's almost a stigma to going out in smaller towns, because it's like, what is this extravagance? And we're making somebody at home is cooked for you, and if you are going out and eating, you're literally not eating the food that was made for you. So you're sinning and you're wasting food. So there is a little bit of change, but it is changing, and we are in different stages of evolution in different cities. So it is interesting, and every city is slightly different, and within the cities, every community is slightly different. Flavor palettes are so different, as seen in our cuisine. Every 100 kilometers, things are completely different. So it's interesting and challenging and sleepless.
That's what's keeping you up. Okay, I'm going to ask you some really quick fire things. Say the first thing that comes to your mind. So since you travel so much around India, what's your favorite or most underrated food city that you've discovered in India?
Calcutta. I love Calcutta.
Really?
The food out there is outstanding.
Oh my God, I had a very different opinion when I went.
No, Calcutta.
Wow. What's your go-to delivery app? Swiggy or Zomato? Come on, you have to say it. I'm going to take your phone and check which one comes up first.
Swiggy.
Fair. I'm going to send this clip to Dippy.
But I do give Zomato a lot of business.
Yeah.
They keep saying your delivery is free and join Zomato Gold.
You've always been a flag bearer for change in our system, whether it was 24/7 nightlife, GST, single window licensing. I mean, obviously in your role as NRAI, but even long before, long after, if you had a magic wand to make one change in the law for this industry, what would it be?
One?
Yeah, you would get one.
I feel one of the things that is really holding us back, of course, we are over-regulated and all that, but the lack of tourism is really killing our industry. It's impacting us in many ways, and we don't talk about all our consumption is strictly domestic consumption. And when you have 22 million people coming into your city, spending 5 nights with $500 to spend, it changes the economy of the city, of the country, and of the industry. I think we desperately need to bring more tourists to come into India, and we see 3 million foreign tourists who come into India. Bombay sees 5 lakh visitors who come and spend one night on average. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, culinary tourism is a huge thing, which a lot of cities are kind of tapping into. So,
and you see, all the great restaurants are in cities where there is tourism, right? And that has a direct impact on the capability of the city to absorb new ideas, new concepts, and give a platform to people in the industry.
In fact, a lot of restaurants have actually led to that tourism because they've become like tourist destinations, right? Like, think about Copenhagen, you think food, you think, a Modena, you think food.
But again, so if you think about
Singapore, like
Spain, which is the most visited country in the world, had Farhan Adria as their tourism ambassador. Australia did food, but it didn't come because there was already a demand. People were choosing restaurants when they're going to a city, and so culinary-led tourism is a thing. And that's one of the reasons why, even though we have such fantastic restaurants, we are not on top of the list simply because those guys are not coming to India, or they're not coming to Bombay, or they're not coming to Delhi, or not coming to Goa. And I feel that that's unfair. I think that more of that needs to happen. You see what's happened to Bangkok. 22 million visitors, and the scene has completely changed. It's now leading the charge in Asia, and it's very, very interesting. I think that tourism is a foundation stone on which good restaurants and the industry can really thrive if tourism goes up.
I agree. And if you took social international, where would you go first?
That's easy, Dubai.
I knew you were going to say that, because you were like, I can just work from
yeah, because in many reasons. First of all, there's the maximum diaspora of Indians is there, and it's just 3 hours away, so it's easy to go with. And my family is there, so
exactly. I think the third reason's the biggest.
Yeah.
If not a restaurateur, then what?
Maybe in the music industry, or in something to do with interior design, I suppose.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are two very unrelated professions.
Yeah,
but,
I know. There's a commonality.
Yeah.
But restaurating allows me to indulge both of these
I know.
things. So, yeah.
Yeah, you've got antisocial as well, which is, it sounds like that was a little pet project that has taken off steam.
Yeah, it started like that. It
Yeah.
started like that. Yeah, it did start like that. But in a sense, that social is about conversation, and antisocial is about the music, and no talking, just listening. So that's slightly antisocial.
Who came up with that name?
There's an interesting story I'll tell you offline.
Oh, okay. Too bad. Sorry, listeners. What's the best piece of advice you've had in your entire career?
I think from my good friend Tariq Ansari. Yeah, he said there's something called benevolent negligence. And sometimes just being negligent is actually good for the business. And you don't have to catch everything, and you don't have to be there to pick up after everybody. So let people know that if they fail, it's going to be their failure. Don't try to prevent those things from happening all the time. And I think that really helps, because then it's like the more independent you make your child, the better it is for them. I think it's similar in that sense. Sometimes it's better to not just jump in everywhere and all the time. Sometimes it's okay to see a car crash happening in front of your eyes and not jumping in. It's
don't
okay.
Be a control freak.
Yeah, so don't jump into all problems. That's I think that's been some good advice.
Yes, it's been a huge, huge learning chatting with you, and
learning.
Yeah, no, just learning that everyone else goes through the same problems, and no, but it's been really grand having you on the show, and I wish you all the very best, and several decades more of social and impresario and all the new brands that are coming. Yeah. Yeah, like they said, right? You wouldn't wish this on your
20 more years of the restaurant
20
industry.
20 more years. But no, thank you. And
no, thank you. I'm a huge fan of what you do, and I'm so glad to be here finally. Thank you.